Friends of Israel shares biblical truth about Israel and the Messiah and promotes solidarity with the Jewish people.
This is Chris Katolka of the Friends of Israel Today radio program, heard each weekend on this station, and here's what's happening in Israel.
Friends of Israel, Saturday afternoon at 2, here on American Family Radio.
Freedom prospers when religion is vibrant and the rule of law under God is acknowledged.
An informed patriot is what we want.
Welcome to American Family Radio's Focal Point, the home of muscular Christianity on conservative talk radio.
Muscular Christianity.
Where we relentlessly explore the intersection of truth and politics.
The trouble with our liberal friends is not that they're ignorant. It's just that they know so much that isn't so.
Now, here's your host, Brian Fisher.
Oh no, this is not Brian Fisher, but I'm happily standing in for Brian Fisher. And you know, when I hear the term muscular Christianity, I think to myself, could that be toxic muscular Christianity? I mean, muscular sounds a little masculine, and we aren't allowed to be masculine in this day and age, are we? Because absolutely, that's toxic. No, listen, I am really glad for that description. There's nothing wrong with muscular Christianity. There's nothing wrong with a little masculine muscularity for that matter. And I know he's being spiritual when he says it. And you can be a woman and have muscular Christianity, meaning strong Christianity. But I like the male imagery, and I just thought it would be appropriate to call attention to it, since in my view, men are under a pretty vicious attack these days for our manhood. I am E.W. Jackson, by the way, sitting in for Brian Fisher, who is the usual host of Focal Point, but Brian is in the process of moving. Close to being back, though. He'll be back on Monday, and I'll be in, obviously I'm here today, but I'll be with you tomorrow as well. And we're praying for Brian, praying that his move is going well, and he is getting settled and ready, and he will be back with you next week. The number here is 888-589-8840. I haven't even gotten into any topics yet, but you can make a note of that, because when you hear something that sort of stimulates your desire to say something, to weigh in, I want you to have it right at your fingertips. 888-589-8840. We're live streamed, by the way, on afr.net. Tell a friend, tell a neighbor, tell everybody you know that you don't have to be anywhere near a radio in order to get our programming. Anywhere in the world. That's amazing when you think about it, isn't it? Anywhere in the world where you have internet, you can listen to our programming. And that's a great thing. Now, for those of you who are being introduced to me for the first time, I'm the president of an organization called STAND, Staying True to America's National Destiny, STAND. And we are a nonprofit that is dedicated to bringing people together across racial and cultural lines to preserve our Judeo-Christian history, heritage, and values. And we get into a bunch of issues. And you can find out more about us at standamerica.us, standamerica.us. My Facebook pages are E.W. Jackson SR. I have a personal Facebook page. It's at Bishop E.J., and there's an organizational Facebook page, STAND, just STAND. Now, if you're listening here in the local area, as I have no doubt some of you are here in Virginia, I am the pastor and presiding bishop over the called churches. We have a local church here in Chesapeake at 943 Canal Drive. You can visit us any day, any Sunday, I should say. We are there. We have a youth center that's open Tuesday through Saturday as well. If you've got young people who are looking for something positive to do, we have the William Jackson Youth Center that's part of our church. It's open Tuesday through Saturday. But our worship services are on Sundays at 11 a.m. Christian application class, which another name for Sunday school, Christian education, is Sundays at 10:15 a.m. And we also live stream at we live stream on Facebook. On my Facebook page, E.W. Jackson SR. We live stream the worship services, the sermons there, but you can also find out a lot about us at our church website, thecall.org. I've been with you several days, figured I'd give you that information in terms of contacting me or interacting with me beyond the program, since after tomorrow you probably won't hear me again for quite some time, unless Brian decides that since I had the con, it didn't wreck the ship, and maybe he's away another time, and to say, let's call this guy E.W. Jackson. I'll happily come back if he will have me. I'll happily come back and sub for him. Well, folks, as always, there is plenty in the news to talk about. So let me begin as I began yesterday. I had a chance to watch the hearings on Russian collusion and on the report of Robert Mueller or Mueller, depending on how you pronounce it, or depending on who's saying it. And, I didn't say this yesterday because frankly, I was a little bit reluctant to say it. But I pondered it over the last few hours, well, since yesterday, and decided it is worth saying because I think the reason why I didn't say what I'm about to say is I thought it just might sound a little petty and nitpicky and personal and all of that. So here's what I was going to say, what I thought to say yesterday, but just didn't. Robert Mueller struck me as being not all there. I mean, I'm very, very serious. He struck me as being somewhat senile. I mean, like something was going wrong. He didn't know things that were in the report, which suggests that he didn't write the report or he'd forgotten what was in the report. He failed to answer questions that I think he could have very easily answered or at least responded to in some way that he just didn't want to go there. And just the way he came across to me was that he was just mentally not focused. And I don't know what that's all about. I don't know whether the man is just tired or whether he's having some dementia issues or whether, I don't know. See, and I even feel a little uncomfortable saying it, but I've got to be honest. That was my thought when I was watching him. Now, here's where it gets substantive, because I'm not saying that, by the way, folks. I'm being very sincere here. I'm not saying that to try to disparage him, okay? I mean, I disparage him on the basis of how he ran that operation. Now I'm thinking, well, did he really run it, or did someone else run it for him? So I'm not saying this to just try to attack him personally. What I'm saying is it further calls into question the validity of the whole process itself. If the person appointed as special counsel is incapable of doing that job, and he has hired, how many people did he hire? I think he had 19 lawyers total, but there was not, apparently, as far as we know, not a single conservative, not a single Republican who was hired to work in the special counsel's office, which means he had a totally partisan and biased staff. And I think he's supposed to be a registered Republican, and I'm not even sure about that, or at least, he may be a rhino. I'm not sure. But at any rate, because he clearly hates President Trump. I believe that he really does hate President Trump. He has no respect for him whatsoever. So if your office is being run by a bunch of politicos from the left, and you yourself are not on top of what's going on to assure that there is neutrality and objectivity and fairness in the way the evidence is being approached and the way decisions are being made, then as far as I'm concerned, the whole thing is just one big debacle. The whole thing is just one big demonstration of injustice. Jerome Corsi was one of the people that the special counsel's office was investigating and interviewed 40 hours of interviews. They tried to pressure him to plead guilty to some crimes that he did not commit. And he refused. He said, I'm not doing that. He and his wife discussed it. They prayed about it. They said, you know what? I'm not confessing to something I didn't do. But they tried to pressure him to do so. Now, I don't know whether he ever talked to Robert Mueller or not. Maybe he didn't. But clearly there were people on his staff out to get somebody like Jerome Corsi, who is, of course, a conservative journalist, wrote a book entitled How the Democrats Got to Be Communists. And it's a podcast book that you can get that online. So he's not one of their favorite people, but he refused. And guess what? No charges were ever brought. You know why? Because they had no evidence against him. So what were they doing? They were trying to basically strong-arm the man into becoming a convicted felon without any evidence that would allow a jury to so find. Folks, that is not justice. That's a banana republic. That's a totalitarian system. That's communism. That's fascism. It's anything but Americanism. So here again, I was hesitant to go there because I didn't want to come across to you all as just being petty and just attacking the man on the basis of what may be a health problem or something. But then as I thought about it, I thought, well, really this goes to the substance of the outcome, doesn't it? Because if he has any kind of professionalism and any kind of objectivity and neutrality, but he is incapable of enforcing that on his staff and he doesn't even know what's in the report, then the whole thing should be thrown out anyway. And we come back to President Trump's, I think, very valid conclusion that this was nothing but a hoax and a witch hunt. And how in the world you go back 12 years to find a crime committed by Paul Manafort? And I think, in here again, I mean, it's against the law, and I realize, we are a nation of laws and not of men, and we should respect the law. But I mean, it's not like he went out and murdered somebody. It's not like he extorted something. Basically, what he was doing was playing fast and loose in reporting processes over some foreign involvements and lobbying that he was doing. Wrong, no question about that. But he went 12 years back to find that. And Hillary Clinton sold out our uranium mining. Hillary Clinton to Russia for $145 million. Bill Clinton got a $500,000 speaking engagement. I'll tell you, Bill Clinton is no $500,000 speaker, okay? I've heard Bill Clinton, and Bill Clinton doesn't, all this stuff about it. Bill Clinton is a great speaker. No, he's not. He's not a great speaker. He's not. I've heard great speakers. He's not one of them, okay? A $500,000, that was a payoff, folks. You don't even have to dig deep to figure that one out. And yet, Hillary Clinton destroying her hard drives, Hillary Clinton hiding and destroying emails, Hillary Clinton making millions of dollars, hundreds of millions of dollars for her foundation while she was Secretary of State, Hillary Clinton's husband making $500,000 on a speaking fee with a nation that is paid $145 million into her foundation. I mean, you don't need to be a brilliant prosecutor to figure out there's some smoke there that deserves looking into, because there's likely some fire there as well. I mean, that's a no-brainer. But he didn't investigate that. So I don't know what to make of him in terms of his own competence at this stage of his life. I don't know whether something is wrong, that we'll find out later something is really wrong, because to me he just didn't seem to be all there. So therefore, is this the person to whom we entrust in an investigation into the President of the United States, in which he hires a bunch of people who are Trump haters, and we're expected then to have a fair process emerge from that? Folks, this whole thing is deeply disappointing, and I trust that Attorney General Barr will really get to the bottom of this. I mean, get to the bottom of the whole Steele dossier, get to the bottom of Hillary Clinton paying for all of this dirt on the president. And look, I really believe that there was Russian collusion, but I believe it was Hillary Clinton and her camp that did the colluding long before she even announced for president, when she was in the Secretary of State's office. So, folks, we'll be coming back with a couple of other topics. 888-589-8840. We'll be back in a moment.
For as often as you eat this bread and drink the cup, you proclaim the Lord's death until he comes. My name is Abraham Hamilton III, and this is the Hamilton Minute. Buzz Aldrin is the famed astronaut who planted the American flag on the moon and explored it for some 21 hours. What many don't know, however, is what Mr. Aldrin did to commemorate the moon landing. Aldrin, a committed Christian and elder in his local church, marked the incredible occasion by celebrating Holy Communion. The first meal ever eaten on the moon was a celebration of the Lord's table, a lunar declaration that Jesus Christ is Lord, Savior, and soon-coming King. That is pretty cool.
Listen each weekday from 5 to 6 p.m. Central for the Hamilton Corner with Abraham Hamilton III, Public Policy Analyst for the American Family Association.
This is Dr. Richard Land, President of Southern Evangelical Seminary. Welcome to Bringing Every Thought Captive. Yesterday, I shared with you about the U.S. State Department's second ministerial on religious freedom around the globe. According to Ambassador for Religious Freedom Sam Brownback, this is the largest human rights event on any subject ever hosted at the U.S. State Department. And Brownback in his address said, and I quote, "This is not an exercise in trying to achieve some sort of common theology. This is an exercise to protect a common human right. Let's determine to fight for each other's God-given right to religious freedom." And as Secretary of State Mike Pompeo, the first evangelical to hold that post in over a century, said, quote, "Religious freedom matters to literally billions of people all around the world. Look around you. Religious freedom isn't just a Christian concern, a Jewish concern, a Muslim concern, a Buddhist concern, a Hindu concern, or a humanist concern. It's all of our concern. It is everyone's concern." And it's a very important time for this event to take place because the need becomes more critical with each passing year. A Pew Research Center report that was issued the day before the ministerial meeting showed high or very high restrictions on religion by 52 governments around the world, an increase of 12 in the decade from 2007 to 2017. It also found that the countries with the highest levels of social hostilities involving religion grew from 39 to 56 in just the last 10 years. As former British Prime Minister Tony Blair spoke in the closing address, unless we deal effectively with these issues of global religious persecution, and we do it soon, we will face a century increasingly dominated by religiously motivated genocide. Sobering words indeed. This is Richard Land.
This is Focal Point with Brian Fisher on American Family Radio.
And we're back, and I'm Bishop E.W. Jackson sitting in for Brian Fisher, who is out this week and will be back with you next week. The number here is 888-589-8840. So I wanted to reflect a little bit on these. I'll tell you, folks, to me, the degeneration of our politics and our culture and attempts, in my view, to overthrow the President of the United States, who was duly elected by 65 million Americans who went to the polls and voted for him. It is that plain and simple. Now, the Democrat Party and the left has just got to deal with that and stop trying to undermine and overthrow this man. But at any rate, here's the other thing I wanted to bring up. And I want you all to think with me and weigh in on this, because I've thought about this quite a bit, and it may be a little bit over the top to some, but I think it's reasonable to consider. You know, people who are not born in this country become what we call naturalized citizens. They have to study, they have to take a test, and then they have to take an oath of loyalty to America and the Constitution of the United States, kind of like what we do in the military. But Americans born here don't have to do that, obviously. But to naturalized citizens who come into this country and go through that process to become citizens, you know, I wonder whether there ought to be a probationary period. Now, I've never heard anybody suggest that, and I can't possibly be the only one who's ever thought about it or even suggested it. But it is people like Ilhan Omar who make me think about this kind of issue. should there be a period in which you are observed? I mean, so for example, let's just take a more extreme example. Let's say somebody becomes a citizen of the United States, they're sworn in. 3 years later, you find out the person's a pedophile, or 4 years later, you find out the person is a serial killer, or 5 years later, you find out that the person is into major financial fraud and has hurt a lot of people, defrauding them of their funds with schemes. Does that person's citizenship remain permanent? Yes. Under our present system, it does. I think the question is, should it? And see, and in my view, the answer is no. In my view, there should be a probationary period in which, if you demonstrate things contrary to the oath that you took and to the commitment that you made as a citizen of the United States, that we should be able to revoke that citizenship within a certain period of time and send you packing. And from my perspective, that's what ought to happen to Ilhan Omar. Because I really believe that Ilhan Omar is an enemy of the United States of America. I'm serious, folks. I really believe that she is an enemy of the United States of America. I played yesterday her videotape in which she talked about Al-Qaeda and Hezbollah, which are enemies of our allies and enemies of our country, talked about them with great enthusiasm. And I want you all, if you've not seen that clip, look it up and take a look at it. And I want you to hear not only her voice, I want you to see her body language. Because when she says Al-Qaeda, her eyes open and her face lights up. And she says Al-Qaeda and Hezbollah. But when she says America, she frowns. She scowls. Her body language really says it all. It says that she is proud to be associated with and has a great enthusiasm for Al-Qaeda, an enemy of the United States of America, Hezbollah, an enemy of the United States of America, but she has absolutely no affection, no enthusiasm, no joy when she mentions our country. In fact, quite the contrary. She frowns, she scowls, she says it with a certain level of bitterness and disdain. You don't say America and she frowns. You don't say America with intensity. But Al-Qaeda, Hezbollah. Well, now she's been discovered to have said something else in apparently an interview with Al Jazeera, which of course is an Islamic news source. I think she felt quite comfortable being interviewed by them. And so she shared this thought. I didn't get the clip for you. I wasn't able to do that today, but you don't really need to hear it anyway. Frankly, what she said was that America ought to be afraid of white men, and that America ought to profile white men, because white men are the danger to America. Now, first of all, folks, let's deal with the easy part first. That's just factually not true. It is simply factually not true. A disproportionate amount of crime and murders come out of the poor and inner city communities, which are primarily black and Hispanic. Now, that's just fact. 52% of the murders committed in America are committed by black males, who are 6% of the population. Now, I don't take any pride in saying that, but the facts are facts, folks. Facts are facts. I happen to be a black male myself. I wish that fact weren't true, but it is. A disproportionate amount of the violent crime that happens in America comes out of the minority community. Now, I suppose what she's trying to say is that some of the mass murders that have happened at the hands of white males, and therefore, white males are the real potential terrorists in America. Well, I mean, that's just complete nonsense, because those situations are anomalies, and you cannot compare as horrible as a mass murder is. and as devastating as it is, it pales in significance to the murders that are happening all over the country every single day in the inner cities of our country, to the tune of anywhere in a good year, maybe about 6,000. In a bad year, maybe about 10,000. No, not hundred, thousands. And yes, as horrifying, as horrible as mass killings are, and they are horrible. There's no question about that. And I don't want to try to minimize that. But as a statistical matter, they are a very, very, very minor part of the violence that takes place in our country every single year. And most of it is individual murders. Some of it is, where people engage in multiple murders at once. Some of it is gang warfare. But most of it is happening in the inner cities of our country. Now, folks, and part of why I think it's just so important to emphasize that is that it just goes to show that Ilhan Omar is either ignorant or she's a liar. I mean, she's either ignorant or she's a liar. But the second reason I think it's important to give this emphasis is, how do you solve a problem if you won't even acknowledge it? And see, this is the issue I have with all of this, the riots and the consternation and the apoplectic reactions to every time a police officer gets into an interaction with somebody who happens to be black or Hispanic and ends up wounding or killing that person. It's the end of the world. It just goes to show that the whole system is out to get black and minority people. And it's just another lie. Because look, folks, I've done the math. If you compare the number of black males who are killed by police officers to the number of young black men who are arrested, what you have is in about 5 1/1000ths of 1% of the interactions that black males have with police officers. About 5 1/1000ths of 1% of those interactions end in the death of that suspect. Now that's all told. Now if you start eliminating, okay, well, which one did the suspect have a gun and fired at a police officer? Which one did the suspect try to kill a police officer with an automobile? And which one was the suspect trying to wrestle a police officer's gun away from him, in which the police officer got the drop on him and had to shoot him? One officer shot a guy. Didn't happen to be black that he shot a guy because he had him in a chokehold and he was trying to choke him out. And the officer kept saying, "Let me go or I'll shoot you, let me go or I'll shoot you, let me go or I'll shoot you." And the guy was trying to choke the police officer out, either trying to kill him or just choke him out and debilitate him. And of course, maybe at that point could have grabbed his gun himself and killed the cop, and the cop shot him. So eliminate all of those. And then if you actually use the number in which prima facie, without a trial yet, prima facie, it's clear based on evidence, not based on some cockamamie lie told by somebody at the scene, like what happened with Michael Brown out in Ferguson, where the guy, the police officer shot him. He put his hands up and said, "Don't shoot," and the police officer just gunned him down in cold blood. That was another big lie that led to all kinds of riots and destruction of property and everything imaginable, and put a cop in jeopardy for his life, lost him his job and his career, and it was all a big, fat, ugly lie. So let's just leave aside all of the legitimate uses of force, because you know that some of them are legitimate. You don't even have to question that. You know that some of them are legitimate. And leave the ones that are absolutely prima facie based on evidence. You can say, okay, yeah, that's a questionable one. There's something wrong there. How many does that leave? If 0.005 of 1% is all of the interactions that lead to the death of the suspect. What's left when you eliminate all of those that are justifiable? And you know what, folks? People will focus on one cop shooting a suspect and ignore the hundreds of people in any given community and the thousands across this country who are dying in black-on-black crime. And you've got somebody like Ilhan Omar telling us that the problem that we need to be afraid of is the white man. I mean, folks, it is disgusting. Just on the substance of it, it is disgusting. So I wanted to get that out there first. But there's in my view, an even more important point to be made. Well, maybe, if not more important, just as important. The number is 888-589-8840. And here's the point that may be more important, certainly is just as important. Folks, wasn't the whole point of the civil rights movement to not judge people by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character? Wasn't that the whole point? And now you've got people running around condemning people because of the color of their skin, if their skin happens to be white. Or, here again, we know nobody has white skin, but you get my point. If the person happens to be an individual of European descent, suddenly that person is the ultimate symbol of all that is evil and ugly and discriminatory and violent and racist and every other horrible adjective you can name. Is that what the civil rights movement has brought us to? That now black people get to condemn white people? That's the point? I mean, you know, well, first of all, see, Ilhan Omar has no clue about the civil rights movement and what it really was supposed to represent, because she's not from here. She was transplanted here from Somalia because of the generosity and the decency of our country that offered her asylum, and now she is rewarding us by dividing us and trying to pit people against one another, pit Americans against one another on the basis of the color of their skin. We've already been through that. We conquered that. We overcame that. And she's trying to drag us back into that muck and mire. And folks, enough. This is why I say, shouldn't there be a probationary period? And maybe it should be for a lifetime when you're a naturalized citizen. I don't know. Because look, here's the thing. If you don't do anything that calls into question you as a law-abiding, decent citizen, if you don't do anything that calls that into question, it's not going to matter, is it? But for somebody like this woman who is praising terrorists who have killed Americans, who has nice, enthusiastic, as she puts it, intense things to say about vicious, brutal, bloodthirsty Islamic jihadists, but has nothing good to say about our own country. I mean, shouldn't there be some ability to reconsider her citizenship? I think there should be. I really do. I think in that sense, send her back may be exactly what needs to happen. And by the way, not only to her, but some of these other people who may come here, well, not to mention illegally, but people who actually come and go through the process with nefarious intentions. Back in a moment.
Here's Twyla Brace, president of CCHF, with today's Health Freedom Minute.
Why do so many Americans embrace Canadian care? Are they clueless, unschooled, desperate to escape the high cost of Obamacare, living in a fantasy land, or just love free stuff? But socialized medicine isn't free. Its high costs are covered by higher taxes, lower incomes, delayed access to care, and rationing of medications and medical treatment. So let me ask you to share some news out of Canada with someone who supports imposing a Medicare for All system on Americans. In 2016, 63,000 Canadians left Canada to have surgery elsewhere. They wouldn't or couldn't afford to wait in line. They paid cash for that care. Where would Americans go? Where would you go?
Learn more about protecting your healthcare choices. Sign up for the CCHF Weekly E-News Update at cchfreedom.org. That's cchfreedom.org.
Thoughts of the child you were carrying keep pouring over in your mind. You wish things could be different, and the loss is overwhelming. A deep, unrelenting sadness overshadows your days, and you wonder if you will feel whole again. There is hope and healing from a reproductive loss. Call the International Helpline, 866-482-LIFE, and talk with someone who has been where you are. Your call is confidential. 866-482-LIFE.
Abraham Hamilton III.
If you really want to see the tides turning in our country, can I challenge you and encourage you? If the Lord could grab a hold of us in our family, you would see the tide in our politics turn.
Stay informed. Stay encouraged.
I'm telling you, politics is not the root, it's the fruit.
The Hamilton Corner, weekday afternoons at 5 Central on American Family Radio.
Here's American Family Association President Tim Wildman.
Lynn Ingram and Jim Duncan, two Texans, support and believe in our ministry here at AFA and AFR.
We know more about the laundry business than anything else. We know a little bit about a lot of things, but we know a lot about the laundry and dry cleaning business.
They created a laundry detergent to sell to folks to support AFA.
We just want to be able to provide a product that can be used by AFA to support the ministry.
When you wash your family's clothes with Redeem Clean laundry detergent, you can take great satisfaction in knowing that you're supporting the vital work of the American Family Association. It's a unique way to increase your giving to AFA. For clean laundry and support of a cleaner society, it's Redeem Clean. Learn more about the Redeem Clean products when you visit redeemclean.afastore.net.
American Family Radio.
You're listening to Focal Point with Brian Fisher.
You know, folks, I make no bones about it. I love this country, and I am blessed to be an American. And I have no problem with others having the opportunity to enjoy the prosperity and the blessings and the freedom that this nation offers and this nation enjoys. But I do have a problem with people who have nothing good to say about our country. Did you all know, and by the way, thank you for your patience. I'm going to come right to the lines here in a second. But did you all know, for example, that Colorado State University was proposing a language code that required that you not use the word American? Yeah. And I've heard that before, but Colorado State University was trying to do that because they said, well, the word American is offensive, and it is non-inclusive, and it implies somehow that the continents of this hemisphere, that this nation, the United States of America, is predominant. Well, we are, and for good reason. But this is the kind of garbage that to me is coming as a result of people coming into this country who really don't love it and don't want it to be prosperous and don't want America to be great and resent it rather than loving it. And yeah, I think people like that who have an opportunity to become citizens and then demonstrate that that's their attitude, I think that citizenship should be revoked and they should be sent right back where they came from. Well, at any rate, let's let's go to the lines. We've got Roger of Arkansas. Roger, welcome to Focal Point here with not with Brian Fisher this particular day. But how are you? Thanks for calling.
Thank you so much for having me. My original point was that I'm having a little bit of trouble believing that Mueller is really as addled as he appeared. It's interesting that by doing that, he kind of took the heat off of himself. He didn't have to answer any kind of real complicated questions. And, maybe he is, maybe he isn't, but it's a little bit convenient. But anyway, the points that you brought up after that got me to thinking about, and this is something that I say all the time. Everybody that knows me hears me say this. We are becoming a nation of watchers. We're not doing anything. And there's a lot of people, all the rancor that you were just talking about, all of the anger and the hatred, it intimidates a lot of people into silence. And when I talk to people about what's going on, a lot of them are just shocked. They don't even listen to it anymore because it makes them so sick. And I just think that it's really important for those of us who are paying attention to talk to other people and to try to get the word out about what is really occurring and get other people active. And I'm going to make a shameless plug for the Heritage Foundation. The Heritage Foundation has an organization called Action for America. And if you're busy and you don't have a lot of time, you can go there, and it's a huge resource for, what your politicians in your area are voting on. They have a conference call once a week where they talk about legislation that's coming up. And my point is that somehow or another, those of us who care are going to have to get directly involved. We can't just sit back and listen to this and complain. We've got to act, all of us.
Roger, I couldn't agree with you more. By the way, I love the Heritage Foundation, and I'm familiar with Heritage Action. You are absolutely right. That is a great resource. And you are also right that a lot of people are intimidated into keeping silent because, let's face it, that's what totalitarian ideologies try to do. They try to punish people for daring to disagree with what they want to be the predominant system of thought. And so you could lose your job, you could lose your business, you could certainly lose your reputation in many circles. You can lose raises, opportunities of a variety of different kinds. And so a lot of people think, you know what, I don't need that trouble. I really believe this. If you were to poll Americans outside in a vacuum, without the pressure that is on them about, let's just say homosexuality, I believe you would find the overwhelming majority of Americans would say, look, I don't care what people do in the privacy of their own home or their own lives, but don't force it on the rest of us. Don't bring it into our public schools. Don't make it a big issue. Just live your life and leave the rest of us alone. I think you'd find most Americans would say, I don't believe it's right, but I don't want to hurt anybody or harm anybody, but I don't want people forcing it on me and forcing it on my children. But you know what? Most people are silent because they know that there's a price to be paid for daring to be identified as quote unquote anti-gay. Right? Okay. Thanks for the call, Roger. Let's go to Sally in Georgia. Hi, Sally.
Hello, how are you?
I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm fine.
Well, what did you call to talk about today? Go ahead.
The president said at the history of America, no president had been treated like that. Now, I didn't vote for him, but I see the president changing, like right before my eyes. I believe God is doing something in the man because the devil is fighting this man so hard to keep him from being president. The devil is at him, and he's using all the rest of them people to come up against him. But I believe Trump will do something great for the country.
Well, Sally, look, I can say this as somebody who did not start out supporting President Trump. I was supporting Ted Cruz for president. And frankly, when I met Christians who were supporting President Trump, or then candidate Trump, I would go, why are you supporting him? And you know what? They would say things to me like what you just said. I really believe God is doing something with this man. And I would say, okay, well, I guess we'll see. I've come, Sally, to see what you see, that God, I really believe God is doing something with him. We know he's not perfect. We know that. But I really believe God is using him to be a blessing to this country. And Lord knows, this country, look, Sally, do you agree with me that America's greatness is in faith in God? America's greatness is in acknowledging the sovereignty of Almighty God. And this president, whatever other faults people may claim he has, he never fails to mention that we need God, that we need one another, and that that Christians ought to be able to worship and preach as we see fit and not be persecuted by the IRS and the government because we don't agree with gay rights or we don't agree with abortion or anything like that. So I really believe that what he's doing is pleasing to Almighty God for this country. So, Sally, thank you for the call. We really appreciate it. Pierre of Ohio, welcome to Focal Point.
How are you?
Fine. How are you?
Excellent. I am a legal immigrant. I immigrated in this country legally in 1974, and I became a citizen in 1980. I have met since thousands of people who legally immigrated in this country, and every single one of us is very conservative and love our country. Not one of us is liberal, and we would fight for it. But the politicians are never asking us how to fix that, because we have ideas, but we are not being brought into the forum. The other thing, too, Omar has been in this country for, 12, 15 years?
I think about that, yes.
Yeah, so giving her a bunch of poof ears would not have changed anything. During that time, she was married to two men at the same time legally and all those kind of things. We just need to apply the laws just like they are. She should be in jail, period, for bigamy and whatever other laws she has broken. Now, this being said, I have two possible comments, one on prayer and one on how to fix the immigration. Which one do you want?
Well, I'll tell you what, talk about how to fix the immigration, since that's the topic that you're on right now. Hit that.
Okay. The thing is, we need to see the world as concentric circles around the United States. Okay? We have good Mexican people who work in this country, and they've been doing so for a long, long time. But we've never made any sense for those people. Now, I like Mexican, but the only time somebody pulled a gun and tried to shoot me, it was an illegal Mexican. So I have faced both sides, the good side and the bad side. But here's what we need to do. Let's look at Mexico because it's easy. Mexico and Canada is easy, but it's simple. What we need to have is that everybody who's illegal needs to go back home. But wherever they work today, if those people are happy with the work, they need to write them a contract, and the contract can only be for 6 months. So then now, let's say it's in Mexico, they have to have a bank in Mexico, and they have to get not only fingerprinted, but also those fast read grooves in the thumbs and the voice, so that we have a way of recognizing these people. Now, also, they need to be identified by their nationality. And that's where we need to go to the Mexican government and say, okay, we're going to tax all those workers, but we're going to split the tax with you, because anytime they leave your country to come and work for us, you're missing out in taxes. So,
all right, Pierre, listen, I've got to take some other calls, but I see where you're going. And look, I think that the idea has merit. Thanks for the call, Pierre. I would say, folks, the only concern that I have is we are so overwhelmed and inundated now that if we start talking about any system that allows people to come in and to stay, we will be right back where we started. You know, there was a time in my life and on this issue when I would say, well, you're never going to round up all illegal immigrants and send them home. That's not going to happen. So now we have to talk about what we can do about it. But you know what? I've come to the conclusion that if we don't do that, if we don't set out to do that and say, you know what, over the next 5 years, every person in this country we identify who is not a citizen of this nation, who is here illegally, will be deported forthwith, without exception. Every single one of them. We don't care whether they have children here or they don't have children here. We don't care whether they're working here or they're not working here. You say, well, Bishop, that seems so harsh. But folks, we have been lax and generous and open and flexible, and look where it's gotten us. And I think without a no-tolerance policy at this point, we're never going to solve this problem. I don't even think a wall will solve it, because I think people will blow up the wall. They'll destroy portions of it. They'll dig tunnels. They'll do anything that they need to do, because they know once we get here, we can stay. See, that's the lure. That's the incentive. And until we say, no, even if you get here, you're not going to stay, because we're going to hunt you down and round you up and put you out. Now, I think until we do that, and here again, I'm a Christian. I love people. I don't want to hurt Mexican people or anybody else, but I love my country first. And in order to create stability in this nation, in order to control our borders, I think we're going to have to get a lot harder. And I'm not talking about hurting people or murdering people or torturing people or anything like that, but I'm just talking about being absolutely zero tolerance when it comes to deporting anybody who is in this country illegally. That means no more dreamers, none of that nonsense, because I've always resented that anyway, because to me, Americans are dreamers. We're already here. What about the American children? I'm a pastor. I deal with children from poor backgrounds. What about their dreams? I mean, what is this stuff that your parents broke our laws to get here and suddenly you're giving the exalted status of a dreamer? I mean, to me, that's just, it's ridiculous. And it's against the American people, who are often frustrated because their jobs are being taken, opportunities are being taken. Look, folks, there's only so many opportunities in colleges and universities, and we've got places where they're giving scholarships to illegal immigrants. Well, what about the American children that want those opportunities? So, I've come to a different conclusion, that we do have to be prepared to do what was at one point unthinkable, given what's happening at our borders now, and that is to just say, you know what, every single illegal immigrant we can find, and we're going to look for every single one of them, we're going to deport them. They're going. All 11 million or 15 million or 20 million or however many millions there actually are, and we know we can't do it overnight, but over time, they're going to have to go. And see, it's only when you do that will you then convince people across our southern border in particular, and those who are using the southern border to get here, will you convince them that, you know what, it's no need in going, because they're simply not going to let you stay. You'll be a fugitive because they're going to hunt you down and kick you out. So sorry about that, folks. Ty, I appreciate your patience. Call me again tomorrow. I'll make sure I get you in. In the meantime, folks, remember, we cannot be defeated if we will not quit, because we are on God's side.
The views and opinions expressed in this broadcast may not necessarily reflect those of the American Family Association or American Family Radio.